All right, as promised, we said that we wanted to bring in, as we kick off the New York Football Giants officially start to their 2023 season, some people from the outside creating Giants content to help us kind of break down a little bit matchup specific as we lead up towards the season opener against the Dallas Cowboys. And that is where Coach Gladney, comes in. You might know him as Coach Ed. I think that's probably the right moniker, but I thought it would have been disrespectful if I just put Coach Ed under you for this discussion. But welcome in, man. Thanks for making some time.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And Coach Ed is fine. When I was back in the day subbing, kids called me Coach G. So, Coach G, Coach Gladney, Coach Ed's fine.
All right, so we'll roll with that, and I'll as we get more comfortable, as we get to know each
hmm
other a little bit more,
hmm
I'll get better with that. But you and I, when we were
hmm
talking about setting this up, I've seen, obviously, if you don't know, Coach Ed is out breaking down film, doing really technique study and showing you where guys are succeeding and failing, especially when it comes to different matchups and the way they approach the game. And that's something that Andy and I just frankly do not have the detailed eye for. So when we came into this Dallas matchup, I thought about two factors here. Obviously, offensive line play, and then what becomes interesting for the Giants, which is the secondary, where they're going to be going with two young rookie starters playing on the outside against the dangerous Dallas offense. So if we look at the offensive line here first for the New York Football Giants, let's start with not the rookie, but the second-year player that has a lot of expectations on him. Evan Neal, I think, listen, last year it's fine. You go back and look at Andrew Thomas, he struggled, right? And you want to see that
hmm
incremental development. What do you look at for him? What did you see from his rookie year that you said going into year two, this needs to be what he improves before we apply it specifically to matchups with Dallas?
Well, in terms of Evan Neal, the biggest thing is, of course, his footwork. I also looked at balance. There were too many times that he would end up on the ground, so that's a balance issue. So whether it's keeping head up, maintaining a lower base, your backside keeping it down a little bit. Those are some of the things with your footwork. Does he take the proper angle? Is he opening up too much? And what do I mean by opening up? It's you want to try and keep your shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage. You don't want to open up towards the sideline too quickly because then you give the defender the opportunity to beat you on going inside. But at least if your shoulders are parallel, you can at least once you engage, you can open up and then ride him around the circle, around the quarterback. This way he can't beat you inside. Because if you open up too quickly, all he has to do is just hit you on the outside, get you rolling that way, get your head going that way, and then come back to the inside in a straight line to the quarterback. So that's what's important in terms of his footwork. His hand placement, that's going to be a big factor going forward. I was actually watching a little clip today where the offensive line coach was talking about whether using a pillar and under a clamp in terms of tacking the shoulder on the defender, whether outside here or underneath their breastplate on their shoulder pad. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be looking for with him going forward.
The two things you mentioned there, specifically when I look at Evan Neal, and I'm just like I'm thinking back to watching games
hmm
last year. Out of the two, I would say my bigger concern is him protecting off the edge as opposed to the inside.
hmm
Now he lost a little bit of weight coming into this camp. He said it's going to help him
hmm
move a little bit better. And then you mentioned about that reach and hand placement. There seemed to be a number of times when it was reaching his hand out, not in the technique of placing where the player
hmm
is and being ready to engage, but more trying to can I get my hand on you a second too soon? And you talk about that balance and footwork.
hmm
In this Dallas matchup, we know when you have a guy like Lawrence across from you, do you worry mostly about him being able to keep his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, make sure you guard against the interior rush, but does it look like he's going to be ready to be able to turn and get outside and shield away that rush from the pocket and Daniel Jones back?
Well, when I looked at him during the preseason, it looks like he's worked very hard on maintaining his shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage. So he still needs to refine it and work a little bit more. But am I overly worried? No. I mean, do I
Okay.
think he's worked hard to, position himself? And do I think Dexter Lawrence is, do I think not Dexter Lawrence, DeMarcus Lawrence is going to get 3 sacks on him again? No, I don't. I don't think it's going to be like to that magnitude. I think he's improved. Weight loss is a big thing. I did say that last year at the end of the season. If he lost about 15 pounds, that could help him in the long run. Plus, coming off of a knee injury, that
Yeah.
helps in his recovery. So, and that helps in, his footwork, and the balance, everything that I was talking about earlier. So I'm not expecting him to, and I'm not concerned with him giving up 3 sacks to
Okay.
DeMarcus Lawrence. So,
I
um,
don't have any
I think
concern about him giving up a sack to Dexter. I don't think that's going to happen. I think
no,
that's very
yeah.
unlikely in week one. But and
No.
I'd seen an interview with Andrew Thomas as well this offseason, and he was talking about what are you working on, and he was saying technique and a lot of the parallel to the line stuff.
Hmm.
But he also spoke about, I'm gonna forget the terminology that he used, but a lot of it was related to that footwork and just saying those tight
Hmm.
chop steps, right? Where it's because
Hmm.
you the way he put it was you never want to be overcommitted one way or the other, right? You're
Hmm.
waiting. And
Hmm.
it sometimes I think that sounds counterintuitive. And I think when we talk about Michael Schmitz on the interior of the offensive line, you want to be the aggressor more often than not.
Hmm.
But the way Andrew Thomas
Hmm.
explained it and the way I'm expecting him to take this just even more dominant step forward this year. That's what I'm looking for from Evan Neal. And to your point, have you seen in the preseason and in training camp that footwork is tightening up where he's not going to
Yes.
be as susceptible as finding yourself out of place and then reaching? Because when it comes to that being the big guy, the mountain of the man that he was coming out of college,
Hmm.
I think that's always the biggest thing. Any prospect, you go size and strength is not enough at the NFL level. Guys are faster, the technique is better, and you can't just say, "Oh, I'll get my hands on him." And I think that's what he got exposed to his rookie year, right? It was, well, once I get my hands on you, yeah, but it turns out you're having a hard time getting your hand
Hmm.
placement there so you can avoid the penalties and make sure you redirect the way you want.
No, you're 100% correct. And in terms of what I've seen so far, no, I'm not. He's worked hard to improve his footwork, taking the right angles, getting out quicker, not opening up, his shoulders towards the sideline as quick as he
Mhm,
did last year. So, I feel he's done a better job. Now, again, he still has to do it on the field. I understand that.
mhm.
Is he going to fall back into old habits? Does he panic? Because that's where guys fall into to old habits because they start to panic.
Mhm.
If you don't panic out there on the field, and you can trust your technique and your new training, I think it will go a long way. So, I mean, it's a second year, and he hasn't played a lot of NFL games like AT has. So,
Right.
it's still a learning experience for him. Yes, we as fans, we want immediate results and we're
Right.
not patient. We're not patient. And that's the thing where, me, I'm looking at him and I'm saying, okay, I mean, if he gives up a sack, I'm not asking, I'm not saying he's giving up a sack, but if he
Right.
gave up a sack, it's not the end all and it's not the sky is falling type of
Right.
um, ideal that some fans have.
And I remember even in Andrew Thomas's rookie season, I remember
Hmm.
having this again. Not, I mean, he struggled in his rookie season. We know that he had the
Hmm.
ankle injuries. We know that. So there's reasons you can look at it. But developmentally, take a guy high, you want him to be good. But I remember in the mess that was the Giants coaching staff, I think it was like the back end of his rookie year where they came in and they said, "Oh, you look like you're getting a little more comfortable out there." And he said, "Yeah, when I
Hmm.
first got here, they tried to make me change my entire technique. And about an X point through the
Hmm.
season, they said, go back to what you know." And I just remember in
Hmm.
that moment thinking, what coach in their right mind would, in its infancy, try to bring in a player that, at least from a draft stock standpoint, has all the expectations of being good at the NFL level and say, all we're going to do is totally rework everything you do? Like, to, having the solid base and then saying, yes, we'll build from there and you'll learn technique from there. But I always found that fascinating. So we have a little more confidence in where the Giants are now and where the coaching staff is. So hopefully, Evan
Hmm.
Neal, for him, it's just, okay, you learn some things. Let's get a little bit better from there as well. And that may come down to
Hmm.
who plays alongside of him. I'll actually ask you one last question before we go to Michael Schmitz. Evan Neal was asked about, do you have a preference of who plays alongside you at the guard position? And Evan Neal's response was, I don't even notice who's there most of the time. Do you take that as a should that be a confidence thing or not? Because on the one hand, you think he's working on his game, that's all that matters. The other side, though, is the offensive line has to work in tandem, and whether it's Glowinski or it's Bredesen, depending on who's there, the way that they play the position, the way that they read and react is different. Would that
Hmm.
bother you at all to hear a player, a young player
No,
in his second year say,
no,
okay, because
no.
that's a good thing to hear for fans.
Yeah, yeah. Let me say this, okay? Offensive linemen, they do know who's there. But when the ball is snapped, if your assignment is a solo assignment and hey, I have to block that edge,
Mhm.
you're not looking inside. You're focused on whoever's on the outside. That's your assignment. If you're working in a double team, that's a different story. Yes, you do have to know how, we come hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot. How does this guy step? How do I step? Yes, that you have to work together. But ultimately, when you're blocking, you start double, but if you're working double to second level, you're going to come off of that and go get, who you're supposed to get on the second level. If you're blocking on the outside, you're going to block whoever's on the outside. So, but ultimately, no, that's not a slight on whoever's at the guard because you have to adjust. If that guard gets injured and goes out, you're going to bring in someone
Right.
else. You still have to know how. So I don't take it that way in a negative way.
Okay, good. That's good. Good to good to clear that from my mind as we head into the
Hmm.
season. When we
Hmm.
turn our attention then to the rookie draft pick, I think who Giants fans were excited that he was available there. There was people that talked about how early is too early to take a center potentially. When we look at Michael Schmitz Jr. there at the center position, just before we even get into the matchup here with a former Giant and Jonathan Hankins potentially being over top of him there,
Hmm.
what is your perspective on Schmitz? Is he, as everyone at least from a scouting standpoint said, the best plug and play ready center in the draft, clear cut, and a big margin between that and other options the Giants could have had in the draft?
Yes, and thank you to New York Jets. Thank you for giving us a gift. So I have to say that.
It's a tip of the hat.
I'm sorry.
It's a tip of the hat to the Jets, right? Thank you for doing the
Yes,
favor
yes,
because there was a world
yes.
where they could have gone that. They could have taken him and it would have made a lot
Mm-hmm.
of sense for them. So
Mm-hmm.
beautiful times when we feel
Mm-hmm.
like our stadium brothers make a huge error in our favor.
Yes, but yes, Schmidt is plug and play. He's ready. I actually watched him at Minnesota for a couple of years. Has the zone scheme concepts down. Initially I just wanted to see is he able to open and pull to get to the edge because we got spoiled with Feliciano with that. He was very good at
Mhm.
that aspect of the blocking. So and you're saying that's still going to something that's transition, but the one thing I did notice when they did do outside zone, he can get to a 4-eye, someone who's pretty much lined up on the inside shoulder of the tackle. So that's pretty much the same. It's the angle, but that just tells me he's quick enough to get out there. So if we need to have him pull and get to the outside, I think he's more than capable of doing it. So, but yes, in the interior, the zone scheme concept, his strength, the way he fights, as Dion has said, the Dion Coach Prime said this weekend, he's a dog. So yes, Michael Schmidt is a dog. So I really like his game.
In that regard, I think Feliciano, when the offensive line overall is not where the Giants fans want it to be,
Hmm.
I think it's easy to look at Feliciano and point out the things that he doesn't do well and areas that he struggled.
Hmm.
He's a guy that wasn't a starter and then gets this
Hmm.
opportunity. But the little bit of edginess that he had to his game, I think, is what fans did appreciate. And it's nice to think that
Hmm.
Schmitz is going to bring that. We've even heard that a little bit from the
Hmm.
practices. Before we talk about matchup Dallas wise for Schmitz, in terms of pulling, do you think it's more likely that the Giants, just based on who they have there, Bredesen, Glowinski, Zudu, we don't know. Once again, there's some level of mystery around what the Giants' intentions are
Hmm.
at the guard spot.
Hmm.
But do you think it's more likely that they'll try to use the pulling guards as opposed to asking Schmitz to get out there more often than not, setting up the opportunity to say, snap that ball, especially on running plays. get your hands on that guy and use that aggressive mentality, and we'll scheme not around you because we believe he's arguably the
Hmm.
second or third best player on the line now for the Giants coming in. But how do you see them using him especially in the run game?
If he's able to open and pull, they're going to use him. Because again, it's not more so him as opposed to how is Dallas aligned. So,
Mm,
for example, if you have a one tech on his outside shoulder, but you're trying to get an offensive lineman to the outside, you're not going to pull that front side guard. That front side guard is going to block down, and he's going to open and try and get out there. So, if
right.
he's able to do that, and he's practiced it, they've gone through it, he's gone through it enough times since he's first was drafted, gone through OTAs, training camp, so they have an idea of what he's able to do. And if it's best for him to open and get out there, fine. Now if it's they feel is better for the guard, maybe they pull the backside guard on in terms of power. Maybe you do that and have him block away. Then you can go that route. But I think he's more than capable of opening, pulling, if that's what they're going to use in terms of how they attack on the outside edge.
So when we talk about Neal and obviously that matchup of DeMarcus Lawrence, there's a
Mhm.
marquee nature to that, right? On the inside for Schmitz, though, is this a favorable week one matchup for him with guys like Jonathan Hankins, with Osa Odi? This feels like it's better suited for him to be able to use the power to be aggressive at the point of attack there over center, as opposed to maybe a more versatile scheme on the interior defensively, where I would be a little bit more concerned about them trying to rotate techniques. Or do you look at it and say, watch out, they may try to rotate in some of those defensive edge players and create a problem on the inside for the Giants with Schmitz and then presumably Bredesen and Glowinski there?
I think in the beginning, it's going to be easier because Dallas is going to stay true to what they normally do. If it's Hankins, if it's Mozzie Smith, I know he's familiar with Mozzie
Yes.
Smith going up against him in college, so he has an idea of how to attack him. So now in terms of intricate aspects, if they bring a quicker guy, I think that's a more of a if it's a third and long type of situation, and they're just trying to get quickness to attack him. But if he's, and I feel that he's going to be more than suitable to handle that. And it's not going to be a situation where it's going to be a major problem, because the other factor is it's a lot more congested on the inside than on the edges.
Right.
You have more room on the edges. So on the inside, there's other ways that you can have the guards help them, even if they have someone over him and someone over the guard. You can slide your line, and then have a tight end. You can keep a tight end in. You can keep it back to chip the edge. Not suggesting that often, but if you want to have Saquon chip
Not
Lawrence,
with our tight
okay,
end room, and then Saquon's had his
yeah.
own problems with helping out in blocking. Let's not
So, but
overemphasize that.
No, but the thing is, you just play different games. So, in a situation like that, I don't think it's going to be a major issue for Schmitz to handle himself, and I think he'll do fine. It's more of, like you said earlier, who are the guards that he's going to be working with,
Yep.
because that's where all right, this guard does this guard does that, because you're the center of the line. So, that's. But I think he's more than I'm very comfortable with him there handling himself and not getting beat.
And that's despite the great debate around who's starting where at the guard positions. I think the strong case for a Bredesen and a Glowinski, not about what is their ceiling as a player, how good are they, just consistency as opposed to an
Mhm.
Azudu, right? You think about guys that are still learning and developing at their positions. You'd hate to give your rookie center something that is a bit of a variable
Mhm.
next to him. It's something that Andrew Thomas had to deal with when he started as a
Mhm.
rookie. And I think oftentimes got overlooked coming out of that season, putting it at Andrew Thomas's feet when you go, did you look at who played at left guard with him week over week,
Mhm.
and some of that lack of consistency? Before we switch over to defense, would you is Schmitz Jr. would you put him as the second best offensive lineman coming into the season for the Giants, even over an Evan Neal, just understanding the difference of position and really just I think what the value is, because as a prospect, take away the position, Schmitz is a first round talent. You just don't take centers in the first round. You wait to find
Hmm.
them at the right spot. So would you put it as a Thomas, Schmitz, Neal hierarchy on this offensive line?
No, it's Thomas Neal. Number one, in terms of abilities. Number two, importance of the position.
Sure.
In today's NFL. Um, yes, anyone who knows me know I say the center is probably equally as important because it's straight line to the quarterback, and you don't want to have interior pressure right in the quarterback's face. But I would say he's probably the third best. I put a little bit more on my tackles because you know what? You're keeping that's where every team puts their prime time play defensive linemen and outside
Yep.
linebackers. That's the spot. So, and in terms of their talent, yeah, I think that they're more than suitable. And I think that if I look at it, yeah, it's Thomas, it's Neal, and then it's Schmitz.
And then everything else shakes itself out in the background there. Unfortunately, I think Lewinsky has been. It's really funny. I don't think he's
I'd
been a
surprise you
disappointment.
though. I'll surprise you with this one. If it's just that I haven't seen him in an NFL game, but I actually think Marcus McKeithen is
Okay, so
probably one of the top offensive linemen. It's just that I saw him coming out of college, and I said, "Oh my gosh, how did we get him in the fifth round?"
this is a part of it. I love the draft time. I don't follow college football a lot in
Hmm.
season, but then I start getting ramped up. You start watching guys, and you start to get
Hmm.
excited about them. And McKathan, I was really happy to see that he was in the 53 because there's a world, I think, perceptually where you'd say, okay, he'll go to the practice squad, he'll develop, he had
Hmm.
the injury, etc. But then, and when you started hearing that he was kind of getting worked out at multiple positions, it just, I think
Hmm.
quietly that staff believes that we actually have a potential backup swing here in the making for ourselves. It's just going to be a matter of letting him get there. And you can do that when you have a Glowinski, when you have a Bredesen, veterans on the interior. You don't
Hmm.
have to force him to play into a guard spot because he does
Exactly.
have a little bit of a bigger, longer frame, which I think plays better to
Hmm.
be out there on the tackle edge, right?
Hmm.
That's a good
Hmm.
one. Okay, so we won't go too deep on that, but we'll have
No,
to connect
exactly.
again because once we start talking about prospects and the potential for players, as anyone who listens to the podcast knows, I will convince myself and all of you that player X can become that guy.